We've got Russians ramming our drones over the Black Sea. We've got China thumbing their nose at us in every country they can. We've got banks collapsing and Biden bailing them out. All those Biden bank bailout bucks go into Silicon Valley and not one penny to East Palestine, Ohio. This is a perfect opportunity for a Republican to win the next presidential election. So, how's that looking for Republicans? Let's bring in a Republican strategist. And she knows a little thing about the White House because she's worked in two of them, Bush 43 and Trump. She's Mercedes Schlapp, American Conservative Union, CPAC, and just gal about town. Hi, Mercedes. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, Larry, let's say that really fast. Biden bank bailout bucks.
Yep.
I mean, that's a lot.
I know.
That's a lot.
I
mouthful.
majored in alliteration in school.
That really
First
got
of
you
all,
far, Larry.
do you agree with my premise here that, this is made to order for a Republican to come in and make the case that this guy is a disaster and he's dragging our country down?
Look, here's the deal. As you know, Larry, politics, it's a short-term memory game here. People forget quickly. And as we know, with every single news cycle, the narrative changes. And quite frankly, yes, while right now at this point, we know President Biden has very much weakened America's stance in the world, basically. Now we're dealing with severe adversaries, including Russia and China, where they feel very emboldened right now. And on top of that, you have these obviously economic woes that we are dealing with right now with high inflation, high food prices. This bank collapse, it really feels like right now is the moment that you hope that voters start to say, wait a second, why do I have buyer's remorse? Why did I vote for Biden in the first place? And start looking into the Republican field.
I do love that his budget that he submitted, they were bragging about the fact that it's the highest pay raise for federal employees since Jimmy Carter. I think all these comparisons to Jimmy Carter ultimately are not going to serve the president very well. They should stay quiet about that. All right, so then what are the Republicans going to do? President Trump at CPAC that you and your husband Matt were sort of in charge of 10 days ago, President Trump gave probably one of his best speeches I've ever seen. It was heavy on policy. It was heavy on what's wrong with this country and what he wants to do when he gets into the White House. Is this how he's going to win the nomination? Because this week, he went after other Republicans instead.
Well, here's the deal. I think with President Trump, one of the changes I'm seeing is the fact that he is honing in on policy. He gave a speech also in Iowa this week, very policy heavy. And he's very good, obviously, at the sound bites, which is we're going to make sure we don't, we're going to make sure we don't end up in World War III. Honing in on all these issues like critical race theory, pushing forward with executive orders to end critical race theory, things that we know that the MAGA base and many Republicans absolutely agree with. Look, one of the things President Trump does is that he will make sure that he separates himself from these other candidates. And he, as we know, he's still the incumbent. He's still the one that leads this party. While you still, you have Governor Ron DeSantis, which people like, and obviously the Floridians don't want him to leave Florida. He obviously is going to be the president's biggest competitor right now.
DeSantis is definitely running, right? It sure seems like he's running.
Yes.
When do you expect him to make the announcement? After the first quarter is done in terms of fundraising, spending, things like that?
Right. So, look, I think that for Governor DeSantis, he's following a very traditional playbook when he's going to, as he's planning to run for president. He obviously wrote a book. He's now going to all these different states. Obviously, he was in Iowa last week. And so I think for Governor Ron DeSantis, he can afford to wait. He can wait till June to run, or May. It would be after the legislative session in Florida. And look, he's going to come in strong because he does have a lot of donors of the more traditional Republican establishment donors who are really are starting to support Ron DeSantis and going in that direction. Yeah. The interesting thing will be, is he able to capture the Trump base? And I do still believe, and we saw this at CPAC, that there is a lot of Trump loyalists, a lot of people who are saying, we want, President Trump. And again, we're going to have to see, Larry, if it's a crowded field, it benefits Donald Trump. If it's a two-man race, that's where it could get a little trickier.
It's almost like a lot of the Trump supporters believe that anyone who runs against Donald Trump it's an act of betrayal, that Trump should run unopposed in this primary. And I've always sort of felt like that Trump had a great presidency. he makes the case and he'll win the primary, but he shouldn't get it handed to him. I mean, a primary would be good for everybody involved.
Look, I actually think a primary is good for President Trump, quite frankly. He does better when he has adversaries. He does better when he's able to make his point, because he does stand out in any of these debates. And, people understand his style.
Yeah.
There's going to be obviously the broader questions as to when you get to a state like Florida with the primary. Obviously, you have a governor who's very popular in Florida. What is that going to look like in that primary? And you have a president who's very popular in Florida. So those are going to be the interesting states to watch. Again, what's going to also be interesting is Iowa, because as we know, in 2016, Senator Ted Cruz won that caucus.
Right.
And now, President Trump is basically a lot more organized. They've really honed in on organization when it comes to these caucuses. So it does give President Trump a chance to maybe win in these more, complicated states like Iowa or even a primary in New Hampshire.
Can we look at the Democrat side of the equation for a sec here, Mercedes?
Why? They're so boring.
Well, yes and no. I mean, first of all, you got to love how Elizabeth Warren and Kamala Harris are having a little bit of a public snit fit.
Oh, yeah. Let me tell you, I think that that for the Democrats, they do want to see change on the top of the ticket. We've seen this time and time again with the polls. And so I think it's very problematic for them. And then we have to see, obviously, if President Biden decides to run again. I think it's going to be much harder for him to use his basement campaign strategy that seemed to work effectively in 2020. And what do you have if Biden doesn't run? Kamala? She's the most unlikable politician, along with Elizabeth Warren, in terms of running for president. And I just think for the Democrats, they've got their own issues to deal with in a party that obviously, when you're looking at the fact that the economy is not where it needs to be, you're seeing these issues with these banks. You see people struggling day in and day out to just pay for the basic necessities of life. I just think that it's a big challenge for the Democrats.
At what point does Joe Biden have to make this official that he's running or he's not running? Because the clock is ticking here for putting together an organization and securing endorsements and fundraising.
Yeah, they don't want to be scrambling. And also, I'm sure there's people waiting on the sidelines. I know Governor Gavin Newsom said that he wasn't going to run for president, but things could change if Biden decides not to move forward with this. Look, I think, again, you can wait till the summertime. I mean, this is kind of where, when you look back at 2016, I think it was Donald Trump announced in the summer. I think you can afford to do that. You obviously have to keep fundraising and building the organization in the meantime. But for the Democrats, it's a lot easier because chances are they might not have a primary. So it makes it a lot easier for Biden to sit back and watch the Republicans just, take each other on, and it could be a big bloodbath.
Governor Glenn Youngkin did a town hall on CNN this past week, and it was probably the highest national profile event that he's done. His name keeps getting thrown out there. Is it possible that he could run, or is he just making it known that he is primed for a VP pick?
Well, sometimes these people run exactly to figure out, maybe I become a cabinet member, or maybe I become a cabinet secretary, or maybe I become a vice presidential pick. I think for Glenn Youngkin, he seems to me like he's testing the waters. I think he's a very likable candidate. He won in a very difficult state, which I reside in right now, although your state, Maryland, is worse than Virginia. But I think for Glenn Youngkin, it's an opportunity to get his message out. The biggest challenge for Glenn Youngkin right now is that he needs to deliver in Virginia, right? And he's kind of stuck because they don't have the majority in the Senate. So it makes it challenging for him to get his job done. Yeah. And so, it's going to be about his record. And the mere fact is that this is the problem with the Virginia governorship. You only go for one term,
right?
And you don't have a lot to show for. So that's going to be a bigger challenge, I think, for Glenn Youngkin.
But if he can deliver, so they have an off-year election this year, so he could flip the Senate to
I
Republican.
hope so, Larry. It looks tough. I was going through those numbers with a couple of political folks. It does look tough in Virginia. But, it is possible. We're ripe for Republicans to win on an off-year election.
And if Glenn Youngkin can do that, he then makes the case, I can deliver Virginia to the Electoral College.
Yes, but he's got to move quick in terms of getting his legislative accomplishments done. That's, compare that to DeSantis, obviously, that has a record of what he's been able to do.
He's got an overwhelming Republican majority
right.
also in his legislature.
Exactly.
We gotta leave it there. Mercedes Schlapp, always informative. Thanks for joining us. More to come.